Hi Capricorn, welcome to your Virgo season reading. It's actually your September reading. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but the reason some of these videos are so late is because a few weeks ago, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I have spent the last couple of weeks just, dealing with it. And yeah, finding my way in this new landscape. I apologize. I'm a very private person, actually, so there's certain things I don't like to talk about, but I do feel like I owe you an explanation, so there it is. All right, Judgment and the Ace of Cups. Oh, nice. Yes. Good. Let's be bowled over by the truth. All right, so let's talk about these two cards before we go any further. Having looked at your astrology, September is the month, or late August and now September is the month where you can get a handle on certain aspects of your personality that it may be really hard for you to admit to most of the time. So possessiveness, jealousy. For the next 3 weeks, you'll save yourself a lot of issues if you're just really honest about how you behave in love. So if you know that you have a jealous streak, if you know that you can be possessive, if you know that you can be a little secretive, you know yourself, you know if you have something on the side, if Virgo season is that season that it wants you to not be afraid of your flaws. Part of the thing that people find, so difficult about Virgos and so hard to deal with is that they are comfortable talking about flaws. They are comfortable talking about things that most people don't want to shine a light on because that light is too bright in the dark. But Virgo is able to go into the dark and shine the light in spaces that a Capricorn would think is unnecessary. You're shining light in a corner that I don't even want to see. Why is this a good thing? You see? But look at it from the Virgo perspective. Virgo's not looking at what's good for you now. Virgo's looking at what's good for you, period. It's a much longer game, okay? With Capricorns, not that you don't know how to play the long game, but with Capricorns, there is this impetus, right, to get to the top. So Virgo doesn't have that. Virgo gets to the top not because they want to, but because they can be so clear in the face of flaws that they can evolve faster than everybody else. If you can't, for example, watch your own work back as an actor, if you can't read your own work back as a writer, you'll never be able to shine a light in those spaces that you can't see. So it's a willful kind of ignorance. And Virgo is not about ignorance. It is an intellectual sign. It's a sign of intelligence. So the way this affects your life is that it infuses your life with this need to see yourself clearly. And in most respects, because in most respects we're talking, here we go, in most respects we're talking about money, in most respects you're very clear with yourself. There is no issue when it comes to what Capricorn knows and doesn't know about their professional life or how they can be. Any fuck shit that you might be on professionally, you're very well aware of it. You know how you are. That's money, that's easy. But how clear are you? And how honest are you with yourself when it comes to love? And the way you are in love? How much of this clarity that's so available to you in every other aspect of your life, how does it feel when you can have that kind of clarity about an aspect of your life that is so mired in denial? If I don't pay attention to this, it's not happening. If I just act like this isn't happening and keep plowing towards the top, yes, it won't matter. And Virgo season is like, oh yeah, it will matter, because when you get to the top, you're going to have to walk off that cliff. Capricorn has no problem getting to the top. We know that. You live up there. But has anyone told you what is in front of you when you get to the top? Because it's that right there. And what is that? Ego death. And what are you, ego? This is just the other side of you. You know that. Those of you who are Leos with Capricorn placements know that best. There is such a synergy between the two signs because you understand ego in a healthy and unhealthy way, but in the same way. So when you get to the top of the mountain, part of the reason that it's hard to sustain that altitude and you come back down and then go back up or find a new mountain and then go up that mountain, part of the reason this up and down happens and that you don't just exist at the top of the mountain all the time is simply because once you get to the top, that next step that you have to take that requires a high level of self-awareness about every aspect of one's life, you can't do it. You don't want to do it. You think it's dumb. It doesn't practically make sense to you. There is no material benefit for you. And so what's the point of this? But here you have this spiritual awakening happening anyway, Capricorn, whether you want it to or not. And it's just hit me. Sitting here in West Hollywood, it's just hit me. This reading is about your spiritual journey. The reason that this reading didn't work and didn't upload because it wasn't the right reading. This reading is about how you guys are standing on the edge of finally taking a plunge into a spirituality. Many of you are choosing many different things, you know what I mean? But spiritual nonetheless. You feel like it's time to figure out how to take that walk, which is just a metaphor for finding faith. Now, for a Capricorn to go about the business of finding faith is quite impressive, okay? Because you don't do anything half. You do everything full. So I already know that if you guys are getting more devoted to your marriage, more devoted to your relationship, more devoted to your career, more devoted to your family, more devoted to God, more devoted to yourself, then you're going to do it right. You're going to do it exactly right, the way it should be done. But that doesn't mean you're not scared. And it doesn't mean that there aren't pitfalls that you have to watch out for on this spiritual journey so it doesn't go left. Now, right up top, the cards are telling you what one of those pitfalls is. And that's that Virgo season is going to show you your truth when it comes to how you are in love. Now, we've talked before about how you are in love and how you are in money and how you are with friends. This all affects each other, okay? This all feeds into each other. Abundance is abundance is abundance, and lack is lack is lack. So in this particular aspect of your life, lack does play a huge part. And we have to be honest about that. You do have a tendency to want to over-control romantic situations and to a certain extent put on a show in romantic situations so you won't be seen, but you will also remain in control. And those two things definitely feed into each other as well. So not being seen and being in control work very well together, because if you're not being seen, you're not vulnerable at all. It's much easier to maintain a sense of control, right? Now, does that mean that we find this out or we realize this about ourselves and you go, you go into a spiral about it? So there's a healthy awareness and then a need to fix this tendency to control, okay? But there's also falling off the cliff, not walking off the cliff, but falling off the cliff with this knowledge and going, oh my God, how have I been? Why have I been like this? It's all my fault. I could have been this. I could have had this. No. You couldn't have done any of that. You have to do this here now. You have to remember Matrix 2 when they're in the elevator. And Neo says, well, that didn't go well. And Morpheus says, well, it went exactly how it was supposed to go. How do you know? Because we're still alive. You're still here. If you're still here, that means that you've done everything perfectly to get here, right? If you were to see your life as a video game, you would see someone who is narrowly getting from level to level, but still keeps showing up. Still keeps passing every level. You're here. So there is no point in having this extreme kind of consternation and being upset with yourself. And, I'm not one for being hard on myself ever. So when I see y'all be hard on yourselves, I'm like, really? Is it that deep? And maybe you need some of that mutable energy right now, because Virgo can go too far. Virgo season can go too far. And it's like, oh, you've been doing this for so long. But yeah, take a little of my Gemini energy on this, please. Yeah, so what? Here we all are, and it's still happening the way it's supposed to happen. And I'm still going to learn everything I'm supposed to learn. So back off. And that's really how you have to deal with Virgo energy in general. You take what you need. You take what's legitimate. Hold on one second. Sorry, it was housekeeping. So you can take what you need. There's always gems in that Virgo conversation, in Virgo season, in that Virgo interaction, in that Virgo energy information you get. There's always gems. Take the gems. The rest of it, don't let it get to you, because the rest of it is what they do. They like to beat themselves up about stuff. It's not enough to just know something is wrong. It's not enough to be able to identify it or even to articulate it. Just acknowledging flaws for them sends them into a spiral. So don't get into that energy. Because that's what I see here. Acknowledge that you have whatever this, it could be something small. It could just be something that's been nagging you and you're like, yeah, I am that way in relationships. And yeah, I can see how that's keeping me from being vulnerable and open with someone enough to be in a relationship. I can totally see that. Whatever that thing is, take it, absorb that knowledge, but don't let it hurt your heart. This is not time for blame and shame. And I have to keep saying that in Virgo season because it's such a season of blame and shame. This is not about that. This is not about what you've done wrong. This is just about seeing a tendency for what it is so we can move forward throughout the rest of the year and have you consistently feel like you're at the top of the mountain and walking off of it and levitating, at the top of the mountain, walking off of it, levitating, instead of having to go all the way down and then all the way back up. This Sisyphus-like thing that Capricorn can get stuck in, where it's not just you going up and down the mountain, it's you pushing this boulder up and down the mountain, that has to stop. And in many cases, that boulder in your life is something subtle that you do in relationships with other people, whether they're your friendships or not, romantic relationships, and it's causing you to be lonely. It's causing you to isolate. It's causing people to not be able to come close enough to you. You're alienating yourself, okay? So when whatever this truth is comes at you and you start to feel Two of Swords about it, don't take that out on the people around you. Okay, you can ruin very important connections when you start to get mad and in your head about something that's not right about you, something that you think should be better about you. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can really fuck with yourself if you don't have grace for yourself about this issue. Because yes, of course, like a cascade of realizations is gonna happen. Oh, I am kind of like that. Well, that also, I could see why then this, and then this, and then yeah, and then blah, and then yeah, okay. But that doesn't mean that we're here to beat ourselves up, and that doesn't mean that you are in some way irrevocably flawed, even if you do see a Sisyphean pattern there that you've been pushing this boulder up and down. Yeah, still, like I said, know that everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to, because you're still alive, you're still here, you're still thriving, regardless of how many times you go up and down the mountain. But the realization can, it can be a little bit shaking, because work and direction is such a big part of your life. So when you realize that some of that work and direction has been in a loop, It might make you a little bit mad, but the cards are here to be like, but baby, loops don't always have to be bad. Look at that loop right there. You can take what's happened over the last few years and you can make it into something that now this realization makes you feel like, oh God, I took so much for myself. Or you can take it positive and be like, you know what? This is now opening up an entire new world for me that I didn't have access to before. You see how the reaction to the same thing can be so different? You can react and be like, oh my God, now the world, a whole new world, right? Or you can be like, oh no, how much have I taken from myself and for how long? How am I ever going to forgive myself for this mistake that I've made? Because I don't make mistakes because I'm perfect. See how we run right back into the ego? Why aren't you allowed to make mistakes? Why aren't you allowed to have grace for yourself if you make mistakes? Why aren't you allowed to admit that you've made mistakes? Perhaps you've made a mistake for 20 years. So what? Why are you not allowed to be forgiving of yourself? Because you're perfect, because you're supposed to be perfect, because other people, you have all the compassion in the world for other people. People fall down, you help them up. People don't have money, you give it to them. People can't get their lives together, you're there to be like, you could get your life together like this, this, this. All the grace, all the compassion, all the mercy. Where is that compassion and that mercy when you turn these eyes on yourself? Why are these horns only sharp for you and never for anybody else? I'll tell you what, from the outside, it can be real frustrating to watch. You are so hard on yourself. And then people around you be doing the bare minimum, lazy as fuck. And you just deal with it. You give them what they need, you provide for them, you do what you have to. But I don't get it. You don't allow yourself a second of laziness. But my God, do you like to surround yourself with lazy people? You have all the grace in the world for them. You don't need them to get up. You don't need them to get a job. You don't need them to get their life together. You've got all of that, right? So if you're so forgiving of people who are doing the thing that you judge the most harsh in yourself, why can't you have a little grace for yourself? Why can't you have a little compassion? Maybe this entire situation is meant to show you that you are allowed to love yourself and others even if they're flawed, even if you're flawed, despite your flaws. But Umber, this is making me feel like I have to acknowledge that I'm a piece of shit. Even if you were, I'm not saying you are, but even if you were. So, does that exclude you from God's grace? Does that exclude you from abundance? Does that exclude you from being deserving of a happy and peaceful life? You see the deep transformation that's possible here, Capricorn? You are standing on the edge of something big. And when I say this is about your spirituality, everything I've just talked about is just another way to talk about ego, death, and spirituality. I'm not using those words, but it's the way you would speak to a Capricorn about it. You are finding your own unique way to spirituality, which is so interesting and so exciting to watch. Because like I said, when you guys do something, you really do it. And if there is anything missing from your life right now that you feel has left a chink in your armor, right? This will make you bulletproof. This will make you invincible. I mean, listen, you don't have to take it from me. You can turn on any Muhammad Ali, God rest his soul, speech or interview you ever heard. The divine makes you invincible. And from everything I know about y'all really like that feeling. A lot. So you are on the precipice of gaining a kind of power that I don't think you've ever allowed yourself to want. It's the power that's kind of the antithesis of what you're like. And I don't mean good and evil. I mean material and non-material. The material and the ethereal. But when you step into this world, you're going to do what you do in every world. You're going to dominate. But in a way that leaves you so much goodness and love for yourself. Gives you so much space for the things that aren't quite perfect, for the things you haven't quite worked out. spirituality, religion. It's one of those places where you're allowed, Capricorn, to take off your armor and be as vulnerable and flawed as you are, because there is nobody there except you and the divine. The audience is private. Nobody is there to blame you, shame you, laugh at you, judge you. In your conversation with the divine, you are not even allowed to judge yourself. And maybe you need that stopgap. It's exciting mainly because of the way it will transform your life. But it's also exciting because it gives you a chance to reinvent your surroundings. The way people talk to you, the way people look at you, everything will change when they sense the change within you. When they sense the lack of inner conflict, they will begin to respect you and fear you in a way that I think you have always known that you deserved. A level of respect that you always knew you deserved. And it's time. But it's ironic because this level of respect is gained through a vulnerability that I didn't think that you would ever have connected to. That line between where you are and where you want to be, I don't think you would have ever thought that vulnerability and opening up about perhaps the most sensitive parts of oneself would be the road there. But it always is. It always is. But thank God for Virgo season, and thank God for Virgo energy, that it gives you this information in a somewhat palatable form that you're able to take it, probably because it's earth energy. I don't think you would take this information kindly, for example, from a Gemini or from a Taurus, or even from a Taurus, yeah, because it can be too harsh. Like Virgos, yes, they're critical. Yes, Virgo energy is very smart and sometimes too critical, but they do have a finesse when they want to, when they say something, and they always know when to have that finesse. They know who they shouldn't say stupid shit to. So the way this information is coming to you, yes, it's a bit jarring, but it's not harsh. It's not insulting. It's not meant to send you into a spiral, although it probably has. But you've got to shake yourself out of this. And once again, I'd like to mention that any sense you have of not allowing yourself to make mistakes is pure ego. And it's bordering on a kind of ego that's frightening. Of course you're going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. You're not omniscient. You're not omnipresent. You're not. Listen to me. You're just a person, and people make mistakes, big ones, small ones, all the time. Get out of your head about it. Stop judging yourself. Stop beating yourself up, because it's nothing but pure ego stroking. Don't do it. Seems like self-hate. It seems like judgment, but it's just extreme ego stroking. Cut it out. Yep, you have been somewhat controlling in your relationships. That's okay. A lot of people are. So what? Yep, now you're realizing it. Yep, this is going to open up some great new doors for you. On top of that, you have this spirituality revolution going on within you where you're ready to walk off that cliff. You're starting to understand more and more that the top of the mountain is not enough, baby. And you see how these realizations, they work in tandem, actually one feeding out of the other. And you begin to see that this level of vulnerability and self-acceptance can actually take you to heights, ironically, that you thought cutting these parts of yourself off would take you to. And there's the lesson. The lesson being, Capricorn, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't know everything. And that's okay. And neither do I, and neither does anybody else. But when you find your spirituality, when you lock in, you will start to feel something else. Not the disdain and the despair of not knowing everything, but the peace and calm of not needing to. When I tell you that I love you, I mean it. I love you. Please pray for me. It's been a little bit of a hard time. I'll see you in the extended, yeah?